Does anybody here wonder why certain women make it to leadership positions while others languish or don't quite break through that glass ceiling? I've given it a lot of thought. I've been very fortunate. I've been able to lead some business organizations and some non-for-profits over the last 25 years. And I wouldn't say that I didn't have a pretty good head start. I'm the youngest of 9 kids. I have 6 brutally strong sisters. And I ended up marrying a man who has a very strong mom and 2 very, very strong sisters, and went on to have 3 daughters of my own that are pretty strong-willed as well. So I live in an area in my home where I've always felt that women could achieve anything. So I had that head start. What I found when I went into the workplace was that when I reflected, there's 5 characteristics that I noticed from all the women that I knew that seemed to break through and make it to the top. So I want to share some of those with you. The first was, and it's kind of easy for us ladies, good communication. I think this comes pretty naturally to us. I know my husband will say that, I seem to do that very well. I can sit for hours talking and listening to my girlfriends. But what I found was that a lot of my friends who had a tough time in the workplace didn't necessarily know how to take that awesome skill they had at communication and apply some of the techniques in the workplace. They would complain often that they'd be boxed out from some of the men who, they'd be the only women as they rose through management, and they'd be sitting at the conference table, and the guys would all be at one end talking about the game they had just watched the night before, or golf. And I said, I've been there. I don't like golf. I've tried to play. I don't understand it. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience, which I don't have. So one time I was sitting at the edge of the conference table being boxed out by the crew who had all played golf that weekend, and I finally asked my boss, the lead in the room, I said, what is it that you really like about golf? And his eyes lit up and he said, I just love being out in nature. I love really being in the moment out in nature. That's what I really enjoy. And I said, you know what? I feel the same way when I go out and garden. I bring my dog out there, I'm all in the moment, I'm in nature. And so we had something that we shared. We bridged and found common ground. And I've often, with people that I've worked with, women I work with, I always tell them, don't get boxed out. Just try to find commonality, common ground, and then you usually find an advocate. Because I can tell you that from then on, any gardening conversation that happened in the workplace, you got to talk to Chrissie. She's the expert on this. And I was no gardening expert for sure, but then he at least knew who I was. He knew what I was doing and how I spent my weekends for the most part. The other skill that I think, or characteristic that I think women really need to work on is self-confidence. This is something that's holding back a lot of women from getting what they deserve or what they really are qualified to do in the workplace. My daughter came to me about 6 months ago, and she was absolutely galled. She had been asked to put in to be elected for a club in college. And she was really, having a hard time considering it, thinking she didn't have all the skills that she needed for this position. She was contemplating, did we think that she was skilled enough to do this position? And of course, her father and I said, yes, go for it. And then she called me, she said, I can't believe it. There are 2 guys who are new to the club, have only been in it 2 months, and they've already thrown their hat in the ring. They had the confidence to put their hat in the ring for the position that she, who had been doing it, in the club for 2 years, didn't feel that she was maybe necessarily qualified for. And I think that happens a lot. How many men and women in here have known men who were promoted, mediocre men promoted over brilliant women? Anybody? Yeah, so there's a few. We need to be better at fighting for yourself. I can't tell you how excited I was when Mulan came out. I was really disappointed with Disney, and as I had 3 daughters, I was like, waiting for the prince to come? Seriously? This is, Mulan, I love her story. She fights, and the more she fights, the stronger she becomes. She becomes stronger and stronger with every battle. And I think what we have to learn as women and men who mentor women is to let our daughters, the women we work with, win some battles on their own. One of the biggest problems I've had with male coworkers is they want to sweep in and save the day. Oh, I can do that for them. I'm a gentleman. I'm doing this, I'm a gentleman. I'm like, no, you're kind of stealing their thunder. So we have to, as people who are mentoring others, let them win. Let them have that opportunity to win, because then they're going to be stronger, and they're going to have more confidence, and they're going to get those opportunities that they should fight for. The other characteristic that most women really need to engage is persistence. Venture capital funding, there's a statistic that only, I think it's 4% of women get venture money. My daughter thought, oh, it's the men, they're not giving these women money. No, she interviewed a bunch of venture capital firms. The women weren't asking for it, and those who did weren't persistent about going back and asking again and asking again. So their interpretation was the women didn't believe in their ideas as much as the men did. They didn't believe in it. So in not pushing and persevering, they showed that they had a lack of support for their own product. This is a great quote from Rosa Parks. "I had no idea that history was being made. I was just tired of giving up." And I think as women, we owe it to the women who came before us, who fought and persevered under much harsher conditions that we have. We owe it to them. Rosa Parks, Amelia Earhart, you think of all the women in history, Madame Curie, who really fought to be heard, and we owe it to them to persevere and follow our ideas. Also finding another way in. I've run into this with some of the women I've worked with, is that they get frustrated when the door is closed. And I once worked with a male buyer who there was no way he was going to do business with me. He had his cronies, they took him to concerts, they played golf, and he didn't want anything to do with me. So I had to figure out how I was going to get this product bought by this company, because it was the biggest opportunity for our product. So we strategized, and we ended up going to all their other locations and all the other managers, because they couldn't all be like him. So it took 6 months, but we ended up getting that business, because they rose up and demanded that we be heard and that they do business with us. So sometimes, ladies, it's persistence, but it's sometimes figuring out other routes to get what you want. Resiliency. So I'm going to share a story with you. I had a time in my life when I had to be very resilient. I was 27 years old, and I had worked really hard for a company. I loved my job. I had been brought in to turn around a sales division. We had done really well. I was pulled into other aspects of the company to help them do good work. And I was sitting at a conference table all excited because I had been told that I was going to be made vice president of sales, when the CEO said, "No woman will ever be on my executive team." So, wow, it was 1993. I thought we were past this. I could have sued, but then I'm that girl who sues, and I probably would get no job in the industry. I could have stepped back and, continued to do all the work and not have the title. And I thought, I can't. This has to be a setback that helps me jump forward. So I had, because I had done a good job, I had some headhunters calling, and I took a job in a much bigger market. My husband and I had just built a beautiful house here. He loved his job, so he stayed here. I moved to the East Coast, and for 2 years, worked really hard at turning around another company in 2 East Coast markets, and proved that not only could I do it, I could do it in bigger markets. And I can tell you that company did go under. That didn't want women in the executive office. I love this quote by Elizabeth Edwards. "She stood in the storm, and when the wind did not blow her away, she adjusted her sails." As women, we're responsible for a lot. And as culture is changing, there's still some things that are staying the same. My mother always said she was so happy to have 7 daughters, because a son is a son till he takes a wife, a daughter's a daughter the rest of your life. So you know what that means. We're still considered responsible for taking care of our parents, as well as the lion's share of responsibility with kids. So, and there's other things that can derail us along the way, and it's how we decide to rebound, how we decide to make things work for us. I have to say, one of the most encouraging facts is women are starting businesses at twice the rate that they have. In the last 10 years, it's been amazing how many women are starting new businesses, and they're starting businesses and they're running them the way they want to work. So there is some good news in this forefront. The other thing that, my final 5, that I think is one of the most important things, and this is that little piece that takes you from hitting that glass ceiling to busting through, is fearlessness. it is amazing how many women give up. And they don't believe in themselves just to push through. And I think all of us who have pushed need to push the others we know through to their ideas and accomplishments. The question isn't who is going to let me, it's who's going to stop me, Ayn Rand said. There are so many ideas, so many good ideas that don't get heard because women are afraid to speak up. And it's our responsibility to help these women speak up, and these are character traits that anybody can have, and it just takes pushing through and doing a little bit more to make a difference. The 5 traits I'm going to go over: great communicator, self-confident, persistent, resilient, and fearless. All of us have these qualities within us. To be successful, just engaging them all, and then to help other people be successful, helping them engage them and encouraging them to have these. I work really closely with a lot of female counterparts, friends that I've had over the years, but my most important reminder every day is these 3. Because it's important that I show them that it's possible. So I have to walk the talk and I have to walk walk the talk every day so that they know that they can do whatever it is they put their heart, set their sights on. And I plan, I've already started to see it, but I plan to help, them and their children, hopefully, well into the future. So that's